Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Daniel.
Good morning. This is Running Around Jerusalem, episode 3. We're here at Mount Herzl, and from here we're going to be going a little bit of a trail run into the beautiful old neighborhood of Ein Kerem. Michael, what are we going to see today?
Well, we decided that we were going to call this episode Running in Paradise, and you guys are going to see it is a beautiful, beautiful run, and no better place to start this off than right next to a picture of the man who said, "If you will it, it is no dream." So, should we check out Ein Kerem?
Let's go, man.
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, so we started off Mount Herzl. Most of our leaders are buried up there. And coming down the hill into the forest. Tell me a little bit about Herzl.
So it's amazing that we're coming to this forest coming from Herzl. Why is that? Because what was so important about Herzl is that he was an organizer when the Jews needed an organizer. He wasn't the first for the Zionist movement. He didn't create it.
Right.
But he basically brought together all the different fragmented sects and movements of people who wanted to somehow establish or reestablish a Jewish home here in our ancestral homeland, the land of Israel. And he brought them together in 1897 in something called the World Zionist Congress.
Right.
And so that's why he's so important to the movement. He gave us a sense of unity. And the amazing thing is, in the Congress in 1901, so a few years later, after the beginnings of this,
had a couple of guys.
There was a vote to establish something called the Jewish National Fund. And I bring this up now because we're about to run through a forest, and you see trees all around us.
For sure.
Okay? When Jews all over the world think of trees, we think of the Jewish National Fund. What is this organization? The idea is that it was supposed to be a fund that was owned by the Jewish people as a whole, to be used to purchase land in what was then Ottoman-controlled Palestine, Ottoman-controlled area here. So that Jews could come and settle it and work it and build it. Now, you would think that, okay, great, this is not a controversial issue. However, the Zionist movement was divided because some wanted to build up a state by taking action and putting facts on the ground and building it up. Others, Herzl among them, wanted to establish first relations with a great power who would give us some type of charter or some type of authority and official recognition to say, okay, Jews are allowed to purchase land and build up an autonomous area here in Ottoman Palestine.
Okay.
So there was this big debate about what to do first. And
in terms of tactics.
Exactly. And Herzl actually was failing in trying to get a world power to recognize it. And in 1901, he realized that the time was now. So they come to the World Zionist Congress in 1901, and they had already put off the establishment of this fund for like 3 years. Why? Because there was one delegate who said, look, we haven't figured out exactly what all the terms and conditions of this fund are. So let's get together, we'll form a committee, we'll make all of the bylaws and everything, and then we'll establish it. But Herzl and one other delegate said, no, if we don't establish this thing now, we're never going to establish it. Now, they actually voted at the conference not to establish it. But Herzl wasn't in the room when this vote happened. Someone ran and got Herzl, and he says, you gotta do something. Herzl runs back in, and he takes the podium, and he reopens the debate on it. And he says to them, look, we either establish this fund now, or you can wait another 3 years, or you can wait until the Messiah comes. And he gets a lot of applause from that, and he realizes that now is the time. He calls for a vote, and it passes. And you have the establishment of an organization called the Jewish National Fund. And today they're known as like the tree people in a way, but they do so much more. In the beginnings, the idea was that this is a fund that was going to purchase land for Jews throughout Ottoman Palestine.
To build the first settlements.
Exactly. And in fact, the land that they purchased, is going to become more than just the settlements. The Hebrew University, they were involved in the purchase of that land.
Right.
The Technion University, they were involved in the purchase of that land as well, in addition to some of the major cities and settlements that you have.
And even like me, I'm sure yourself as well, growing up as a kid in London, every single classroom or synagogue or Jewish establishment that you went to, you would have a little metal JNF charity box, put your few coins in. It was, I remember even what it looked like, green and blue and white.
Exactly.
It was a well-known thing, like that's what you did.
Exactly, and this is one of the brilliant moves of the first head of the JNF, who established these little blue boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, and now the truth of the matter is, these blue boxes, which were essentially a way of collecting money for Jews all over the world for this cause, they didn't raise that much money, but they raised the profile of the initiative. They raised the profile of the organization.
Right.
And to that was this brilliant move. And everyone, like you said today, knows about these blue boxes.
Right. And today, as you said, recognised as tree people, as you said, but it's very much recognised as an organisation that turns a lot of the browny desert of Israel into beautiful forest areas like we have now.
So this is exactly the point, is that Israel is really the only country that in the last 100 years has a net growth of trees.
Right.
A lot of this is because of the work of the JNF. But they've also developed Israel's advanced water system and worked on that.
Yeah.
They have built numerous reservoirs all out throughout the country. They've worked on the projects to recycle wastewater. Israel recycles over 80% of its wastewater, which is then used for agricultural and other purposes.
Right.
We are by far the leading country in the entire world for using recycled wastewater.
These are all drinking water comes from the sea. It's the water system that takes seawater and turns it into drinking water.
So that's a different system, right?
Yeah.
That's the desalination plants that Israel has built,
right.
Which is amazing that now a third of our drinking water comes from desalination plants. And whereas in the past, water was
a bit more difficult.
The most precious resource, it still is, but we all had to rely on the Sea of Galilee, the underground aquifers. Now, because we have this desalination process, we are in a much better shape for water than we ever were in the past.
Right.
And so Israel has actually become this leading expert for the entire world for expertise in dealing with water crises. I'll give you an example. Anyone in California over there? California a couple years ago signed a deal with Israel to work on dealing with their drought and their problems that they have.
Yeah, huge drought issues.
So the JNF is involved in all these organizations, these initiatives to help make Israel green and sustainable and improve the environment. And you mentioned the desert. Guys, we're going to do some desert runs. That's for sure. And when we go there, it's going to be funny. We're going to go say, okay, this episode is going to be running through the desert, and we're going to get to a place, and it's going to be like this green oasis with fields and trees and crops growing. And you'll be like, where's the desert?
Right.
This is because of a lot of the work of the JNF as well.
Right.
So big shout out to them.
So we're about to cross the gate, which is the top end of the community area of Ein Kerem. So why are we running here today?
So first of all, it's a beautiful run. That's one of our favorite
definitely runs. For sure. I'm loving it.
This run allows us to weave together so many different pieces of history and religion, really. Right. This is going to be one of the first runs we're doing that really is going to focus on one of the religions. And we're going to have an emphasis on Christianity here because Ein Kerem is important to the Christians, which we will explain in a moment. But before we even get to that piece, as we come towards Ein Kerem and we're running through these mountains and these trees and these fields, let me ask you something. Where do we see Ein Kerem mentioned in the Bible? The truth is, it's not mentioned by name, okay? There's some who associate it with a place called Beit Kerem. Okay. But we don't actually know that. Okay. However, if you read between the lines, that's where you see it. What do I mean? Go on. Anyone who's familiar with the Song of Songs, traditionally written by King Solomon, he describes landscape, okay? It's a love poem between God and the Jewish people, but he describes the landscape. And what he describes, you can see everywhere we are. The types of trees, right? Figs, grapes, the springs that are mentioned is all described in the Song of Songs. So when you run through here, what's so amazing is that those pieces of the Bible really, really come alive.
The winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth. The time of the singing bird is come, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines in blossom give their scent. A fountain locked, a sealed up spring.
Hence running in paradise.
Speaking of paradise, one of the prophecies that exists in the Bible, right, is the Jews being gathered from all corners of the world and brought back to the land of Israel. Right? So we would call that in modern terms the Zionist movement in a way. So in December 1948, okay, so you're several months after the state of Israel has been declared. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that Jews throughout the Arab world were actually kicked out of their countries. And the state of Israel brought them here. So especially you can imagine Jews in Iraq or Syria or Yemen that were brought over here and they needed housing for them. So there's a story of December 1948. 2 truckloads of these North African Jews arrive in Ein Kerem. At this point, you have to imagine the scene.
Were they pleased? Did they like it?
Far from it. They almost started to rebel because they get here, they realize there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's sewage in the street. This place was the dump. And they refused to get off of the trucks.
I mean, fair enough, wouldn't you? Look, they're refugees, they got nothing when they're coming here. But still, like, don't treat us like that. Until this Russian nun at one of the convents here sees the commotion, and she runs down and she says to them in Russian, "You ungrateful fools, this place is paradise. Get off the trucks." Someone figured out what she was saying. One of the trucks unloaded and they remained here, and they were probably grateful for it. The other truck went back. Those people probably regret to this day, because this place, as we're going to see, is so charming. It's so beautiful. It is a paradise. It's like a little quaint village in the middle of Jerusalem. It feels very, very, I mean, you almost feel like you're in the middle of the countryside, and yet you're, 15 minutes from downtown Jerusalem. It's a very interesting area. And if you subscribe, we can add this house to, our Rakevet on the train track house. We can have one here as well. So Michael, you said in that great story that there was a convent here already in 48. And you said earlier up the hill that this was going to be a run more focused on Christianity. Why is this place important to the Christians? What's important about this place?
It's funny you mentioned that as we pass the synagogue where people are davening, are praying.
This is a COVID style praying outside, sitting 2 meters apart. I love it.
So this place is associated with 2 stories. Well, really 2 stories are really one in the Christian Bible, in the New Testament. And one of it is that when Mary had just found out she was pregnant, she came to visit her cousin Elizabeth. So this town would have been, according to tradition, the place where Elizabeth lived. And Elizabeth and her husband Zechariah are going to father a child that is going to be known as John the Baptist. Another very important figure in Christianity we'll talk about in a little bit. So what's one of the most important things you're going to have in an ancient town?
Fish and chips.
All right, you are way too British. Okay, give me something else.
Serious answer, I'm gonna go with water.
You got it, right? You need the water hole, you need the spring, and that's exactly where we're going right now. It's a place here in Ein Kerem, they call it the Mary's Spring, the main spring of the ancient village. Now we know archaeologically that there was an ancient village here from 2,000 years ago from the time of Jesus. So the fact that you had a Jewish village and Mary could have come here,
so the story is very feasible. The tradition is very feasible.
It's absolutely feasible. We'll talk about that also a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I want you to imagine as we come up towards the spring here, that, you know, Mary and Elizabeth are hanging out in this area. If they're living here, they're going to be coming and visiting this spring.
Right.
This is the water source here. So it's pretty amazing to imagine them, you know, these figures that we know about from the New Testament. We get to hear we're touching the water. It's not like it's different springs. It's not like it's a different location.
So the spring that was 2,000 years ago is still the spring today.
And here's what's amazing. Look at this spring, right? This is the cover of the spring.
Right.
What is that tower?
That's a mosque.
Right, it's a minaret from a mosque. Yeah. We passed a synagogue.
Yeah.
There are churches all around.
Yeah.
There is a minaret from a mosque that was built about 500 years ago.
Right.
This is Israel, right? This is Jerusalem, the mix of these cultures. And here we have the spring.
So where's this water actually coming from? Do you know to tell me?
So remember we mentioned in the Song of Songs that there was a type of spring called a closed up spring.
Right.
So this is that type of spring. The Israelites figured out if you can actually dig a hole into the mountain, right, and you carve out a little cave there, then you're able to collect the water year round as it's trickling down that you can tap into year round, which means you don't have to only farm during the rainy season. Right. You can farm a place year round, which is an amazing agricultural revolution which allows you to sustain a much larger population. Think of it this way, this is the ancient drip irrigation system.
So you spoke about Mary and Elizabeth using this spring. Is this water still used today?
Well, let's follow the water and find out.
Let's follow the water, guys.
Come on.
I love this area. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And we're about...
one of the most beautiful areas of Jerusalem. Stunning.
Well, I see your answer already.
Right.
At the bottom of this hill.
So it actually says here, in Hebrew, that this is a community garden built by the community, and it says really interesting words here. Gan Eden, from paradise. So everyone should be able to benefit from the paradise that we have built here. So wherever we say running in paradise, we really are. Let's carry on following the water. And here's our 3,000-year-old water. And
here's our water, same one coming from the spring. But let's keep following it down, and you're gonna see that people are still farming this area. But look at this. For example,
rosemary.
Rosemary.
We've got lavender.
We've got lavender.
These are grapevines over here. We've got some fig trees down the bottom there.
Nice.
Let's go follow the water for a second and see how it's being used.
Let's do it.
And there you go. Literally dropping down into these terraces and feeding this lovely community garden that the community of Ein Kerem have built. I mean, it truly is amazing. And as I said, we said when we were running through the market that day, the smell of bread was really amazing. Here, the smell of lavender and rosemary and herbs, or herbs, as you say in America for some reason I don't understand, is truly just overwhelming. You smell that smell, Michael?
I do.
Definitely the smell of paradise. What kind of farming we got going over here?
So you remember we're in the mountains, okay?
Yeah.
And I know you're not a farmer. We talked about this, right? Okay, but hopefully we have some farmers out there. And any farmer who is in a mountainous area knows if you want to farm it, you have to carve what's called terraces into the mountain. Right. In these mountains, you have terraces 3,000 years old that people have been farming almost continuously.
Yeah. I really love these community projects where people come together out of their own initiative and just sort of come and build something really amazing.
And this is a place that didn't always look like this. We mentioned that Ein Kerem, when 48, was a total dump.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that this particular garden is an initiative of the community.
Yeah.
The people here came, they took control of their own lot.
Yeah.
Right, of their own fate. And they said, we want to make this something special. We want to make it something beautiful. And they built this place up with their own hands. Right? It actually reminds me a little bit of King Solomon.
Yeah.
Because when the way that King Solomon built the temple and the labor he used to build the temple was the people. Taxes back then weren't just people paying. It was them giving their time to go on these building projects.
Right.
Now you can say, oh my God, I can't believe it's forced labor. However, there's a positive side to it.
Right.
And the positive side is they get to build this holy place with their own two hands. They get to build it up.
Right.
And that's what you have here. People are built, what we're going to learn is that paradise isn't necessarily something that's just given to you.
Yeah.
But you actually have to build it up. You have to make it into paradise.
So you were just speaking about King Solomon, and you said earlier that this place is actually not mentioned in the Old Testament. But this place is so important to Christianity. Is it mentioned by name in the New Testament?
Actually, no. So I know what you're going to ask next. Go ahead.
How do we? Yeah, exactly. How do we? Why is this place important? And how do they know it's here?
That's the $64,000 question, right? How do you actually know that the stuff happened here, right? If there's no real quote-unquote proof.
Right.
So this is a question you have to ask throughout the entire land of Israel.
Right.
And one of the ways that we know how to identify places has to go not just with archaeology, but with tradition.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, what would we have to find to know that this is the place where Elizabeth lives? You'd have to find something that says, here is where Elizabeth lived. Welcome to our humble house, right? You're not going to find that. But how far back does the tradition go that this is the place?
Right.
And the truth is, we're going to be at the end of this run at a church called St. John's in the Mountains.
Right.
And underneath that church is actually a Byzantine chapel. We're talking about 1700 years ago.
Right.
That this place was identified as by early Christians. Wrong turn. Wrong turn. Wrong turn. That's one of the amazing things about this place is that you can let walks in the alleyways just like us. Let's keep going.
And lovely friendly dogs.
So there's a Byzantine chapel, which means 1700 years ago, early Christians already identified this place as the traditional hometown of Elizabeth and Zechariah, right? And where Mary came to visit, and where John the Baptist was born.
Right.
So that's a pretty ancient tradition.
Right.
Think of it this way.
1700 years ago.
Exactly.
Right.
And think of it this way also, that Jews, we identify the Temple Mount as a place where Abraham brought Isaac to sacrifice him.
Check out video 1, guys. Yeah.
How do we know it happened up there? There was no sign that said Abraham was here.
Right.
Oral tradition. And it's an ancient one that goes back. So there's really, while you can't prove it actually happened there, there's really good reason to believe that this actually did. And this is the view I want to take you guys to. You'll see right across the valley the golden onions of the Russian church. And then straight across, you'll see the green steeple of the Church of the Visitation. As we mentioned, there are a lot of churches around here. And then where the big crane is, that's actually Hadassah Hospital, where my daughter was born.
So during that amazing lookout, there's like a large concentration of churches over on the other side of the valley.
There is.
Why a specific concentration over there?
Well, again, this is the place we were talking about because of Mary visiting Elizabeth here.
Right.
And because of the birthplace of John the Baptist, this has become really important.
There's a specific reason for that Russian Orthodox church over there?
So there's actually it's a connection to another Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
Who actually is the granddaughter of Queen Victoria.
Come on. The English are back again.
And she married into the Russian Tsar family, okay?
Right, okay.
The Romanovs. Famously. Which means that when you had the Bolshevik revolution, she also was hunted down with the others.
Right.
And they tell the story of how they took her and a bunch of others rounded up and they threw them down live an abandoned coal mine shaft. And then they threw grenades down in there to make sure they were dead.
The revolutionaries.
The revolutionaries. Yeah. But apparently it doesn't kill Elizabeth right away. And what she does, she gets wounded and she rips off her clothes and uses it to bandage other people.
Right.
And starts singing hymns in order to calm people. And apparently one of those hymns is what drew people towards the abandoned mine. By the time they were able to get help, everyone there was dead. Right. And one of the things that they found around Elizabeth were 2 unexploded hand grenades.
Amazing. That's a good story. Okay, so we just passed a very large monastery back there. Looks like a monastery church.
Convent.
A convent.
Because it's from the Order of the Sisters of Zion.
Okay.
Which is another interesting story. Founded by these two brothers, Ratisbon brothers from France, who originally were Jews, and they converted to Christianity. One of them converted because he was in Italy and had a vision of Mary, who came and visited him and changed his life. And he came to the Holy Land and he established a couple of convents around here.
Right.
And the Sisters of Zion, if you ask the nuns today, they will probably tell you that their mission in life is to bring together Jews and Christians.
I'm just going to pause here for 1 second. Got a little taster. This will be coming up later. Makes our own jam. Next video in Ein Kerem.
This is one of the most beautiful areas, I think.
Yeah. And
by the way, I love running through these alleyways with you guys because it allows me to tell you that this is why you actually have to come here. The feeling we get here is just so amazing.
I don't even know on the sound if you guys can hear the church bells, which have started just ringing right now. And you couldn't smell the rosemary and the lavender in the community garden, so it's really, Ein Kerem is definitely one of the places worth coming to.
So running with us here is a taste. You gotta come and experience it for real too. And when you do, I know a good tour guide I can set you up with.
That's known as affiliate marketing. Okay, we're running towards our last destination of this lovely run.
That's right.
What are we running to?
It's another church. It's called St. John in the Mountains, or you'll see the sign that says St. John Harim.
Right.
Right? Harim are mountains in Hebrew.
In Hebrew, yeah.
And again, because this is the traditional birthplace of John the Baptist, and the story in the Christian scriptures says that Elizabeth and Zechariah were without children, and she couldn't have children.
Yeah.
Zechariah was a priest who served in the temple. And one day he was serving in the temple, offering up the incense on the altar, and he had a vision or a meeting with the angel Gabriel.
Right.
And Gabriel says, you're gonna have a son. He doesn't believe them, and he's struck with this bout of not being able to speak.
Right.
When is he able to speak again? When, lo and behold, his wife gives birth, and he names the kid John, as Gabriel had commanded him.
Yeah.
And he's able to speak again, and he lets out this prayer called the Benedictus. And what's amazing about this church right here is that all around this courtyard, you have the Benedictus in dozens of languages. So the Benedictus is this prayer of gratitude.
Right.
And on that note, I want to thank you guys for running with us. Thank you, Daniel, for a wonderful morning.
Thank you, Michael. It was a great run. We ran about 4 kilometers, starting off right at the top of the hill, pretty much downhill through the forest, did a bit of trail run, came into the beautiful town of Ein Kerem, beautiful community garden, ran through the town. It's stunning. Come. I cannot tell you enough. We'll see you next time. Running around Jerusalem, guys.
Have a good one.